Shalom from Israel, and welcome to our Torah for the Nations weekly meeting. You know, it was 7 years ago in the fall of 2013 that I moved to Israel. And so I thought this would be a good time to tell my story. My spiritual journey is very tied to my physical journey. So I'm going to tell you how I got from New York to Texas and to Israel, where I am now. And this way, you know, when you listen to the teachings, you can kind of get a feel for just who I am and what my story is. Okay, so I grew up in Rome, New York, and I went to Catholic school, and that was very much the norm there. And you know, I was a Roman Catholic in Rome, New York, and it was in the 60s and early 70s that I was in Catholic school, and it was the time when, you know, we had a Catholic president and the Pope came to the United States for the first time. So just about everybody I knew in Rome, New York was Catholic. And my father had been born in Rome. His family was Catholic. And then my mother moved to Rome. And when her and my dad wanted to get married, she converted to Catholicism so that they could have a church wedding. So when I was 12, though, I was in the 6th grade, and my class was getting ready to make our confirmation. And then something happened in my home life that just changed everything. It changed the whole direction of my life. And the way that my mom tells the story, the way that she used to tell the story, was that she said these cute college kids came and knocked on our door one day during spring break. Must have been around 1971 or so. And she said, they said, "Hi, we're from Texas. Do you want to study the Bible?" And she loved their accent, and she invited them in, and my mom began to have Bible studies. And that led to her setting up some Bible studies for me. And that led to me going to school and telling my teacher, Sister Mary Constantine, that my mom and I were having some Bible studies with some nice people from the Church of Christ. And the nun set up an appointment for me to go and talk to Father Matt, to talk to the priest. And that led to me having a meeting and bringing my Bible to school and talking to him about the things that I was learning. And I told him about things like what I had learned about praying to Mary. That was one thing. Other things, but you can imagine, he was livid. And he got up and he walked over to the shelf and he pulled a book off and he said, "We do what we do because we are Catholic, and this is what Catholics do." And he showed me the Catholic Catechism, you know, and this is our book and this is what we follow. And I remember him just saying, "You're questioning the Catholic Church?" Just like that. I mean, it was incredulous in that anybody would do that at that time in that place, I guess. And so it wasn't going well. That led to him calling my dad. My dad got a phone call from the priest. He got chewed out for allowing his wife and daughter to be rebellious. That led to my parents having a huge fight and of one of many on this subject, and it led to me running away from home, and that was the beginning of my spiritual journey. So when all the drama died down, you know, I only left for a day, not even a day, but I came back, and my dad let me choose. So there was my dad's traditional church and my mom's newfound church. You know, my mom had got saved, and my mom was just wanting everybody to get saved, and she was just wanting to have Bible studies with everyone. And I chose to go to Mom's church. So I guess it was about when I was maybe a year later, when I was about 13, I read the Bible. I decided to read the Bible, from start to finish. I started in Genesis. I didn't get very far before I had a question. And I was reading the creation story, and I read how God rested on the seventh day. And so I asked the Church of Christ minister. I would spend the weekends with them a lot because they had 5 kids, and their oldest daughter was my age. And so I was at their house one weekend, and I asked her dad, who was the minister, I said, why is it that if God rested on the seventh day, that everything is closed on Sunday? And so he told me that I was reading from the Old Testament and that the Church of Christ followed the New Testament, and that in the New Testament, the church was on Sunday. And I remember him asking me, do you understand? And I remember just saying, no, I don't really get it. And it bothered me for a long time, I think. But the worst part, because I saw words like eternal, for all time, Sabbath. But what was really hard for me was that it didn't seem to bother anybody else. It didn't bother the pastor. It didn't bother my mom. It didn't bother anybody else at church. It was like, this is weird. I said, what did they do? Did somebody just make an announcement one day, we're not going to meet on Saturday anymore. The new day is Sunday. Anyway, I could never really get a good explanation of what happened. And little did I know that it would be about 40 years later that I would finally get the real answer to that question. But so when I was 19, there was a young woman from my church, and she showed me her Abilene Christian College yearbook. And the people at Mom's church, they were kind of worried about me because I was dating my high school sweetheart, and he was Catholic. And they said, you see what happens in your parents' marriage when you're not equally yoked. And it's very important, I said, Abilene is the place to be. And so you want to go to this college, you'll meet a husband, and Abilene's the best place to raise a family, and you'll be surrounded by other people in the Church of Christ. You won't be there was just a little bitty Church of Christ in Rome. Just about everybody was Catholic. So it's like, you won't be so much like a fish out of water. You'll go and you'll just be with like-minded people. And it sounded like a good plan. It was very emotionally hard, though. To break off with my boyfriend, to leave my, family, to leave everybody I knew, take one little suitcase and head for Texas where I knew no one. And not only that, I was living at home. I didn't have any money. I was living at home. I had a little job at a pharmacy, and I didn't qualify for financial aid because they went by my parents' income. And so I had to take out a huge loan. And I didn't ever end up, it was like a $10,000 loan to get through 1 year. And this was in the 70s, so $10,000 is a lot today. And in the 70s, it was really a lot. So I was really committed to this, spiritually, emotionally, financially. I just was all in. I said I was 29 years old by the time I got that loan paid off for just that 1 year of college. But so I went to Texas, and this was in 1978, and in 1980, I met my husband, and we got married 6 months later, and we drove up to New York, Rome, New York, and my parents gave us a wedding, and it was over Christmas break. And we were married 33 years before we got a divorce, and during that time, we never really were equally yoked. But I wouldn't change anything because I got 6 beautiful children. We made some great kids, and but for most of that time, church was just really not his thing, and so I was just in Abilene trying to find my way spiritually. When I was pregnant for our first child, I got invited to Abilene Community Church, which was a non-denominational, spirit-filled church. That was something new for me. And I remember the first day that I went, I was late, and I sat on the back row, and there was a lady named Daisy who was also late. We both sat on the back row together. We talked, we exchanged phone numbers. And Daisy was, her and her husband were landlords, and we ended up later renting our next house from them. And she was a lifelong friend. And until she passed away, I spoke at her funeral. So we kind of bonded. I was missing my mom, and she was missing her daughter, and we just kind of were bonded emotionally, and we were both searching spiritually. She had been going to the Mormon church, and I had been going to the Church of Christ. And so we met up there at the community church, the non-denominational church, and it was a church that was, there were prophecies, there was speaking in tongues, there was musical instruments, and whenever my mother would come down to visit, when I would have the babies, she would come, and I would bring her to church with me, and she was a little upset that I wasn't going to the Church of Christ. She preferred the Church of Christ. She preferred a cappella music. She said, "Oh, that noisy church." She called it my noisy church. So I was trying to write some notes, because I'm trying to fit a whole lifetime in a half hour. But so, let's see. Okay, so so Daisy had come out of the Mormon church, and my mother was concerned about me because I left, the Church of Christ. Her family and her church members were worried about her, and they were always trying to get her to go, back to her church. And I remember going with her, and at that time, just learning a lot about what the Mormons believed. I was just searching. So, but I was busy. I had 6 kids in 10 years, and they were all athletic like their dad. And so I was a soccer mom to the 10th power, just busy with life. And I went mostly to the non-denominational churches, but when it got to the time when I was looking for a youth group and the kids were getting older, I think I counted in my head about 5 church splits that I was, just painful church splits that I was a part of in about a 15 or 20 year period. And I ended up just deciding, I got some good advice from a retired teacher friend. She said that the best thing that I could do spiritually for my children was to sit them around the dinner table, turn off the TV, and just in a very pleasant way, teach them about God, teach them morality. And so that's what we did. And my kids all say that's one of their best childhood memories, is what we had family nights on Wednesday night, because there were no sports on Wednesday night. And we would do things like play Fear Factor, we'd have the Bible study, and then we'd have games and prizes. And this worked really, really well for my family. Some people do homeschool. It's kind of like I got into home church. And so there was 3 or 4 major things that happened between 1998 and 2012. The first one was, we got a computer, we got an internet, and the kids were graduating from high school and going to college. And during that time, I went back to college. So all 6 kids and I all graduated from college, from a Christian college. I went back to the Abilene Christian College, or university at this point, where I finally finished my degree. And all the kids graduated from the Methodist college there in Abilene. And anyway, we were all just sometime in there taking classes about church history, about how the New Testament came together. And I was just doing a lot of studying, reading on the internet, research papers. So I learned everything. I looked up about Emperor Constantine, because that was my teacher's name, and the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades. I learned myself how I got the answer to that question, what all happened and who changed the Sabbath. So finally, here we are, like 40 years after I had first asked him, and on my own, because I had, this information at my fingertips with the internet, and we were back in school, and so it was just a time of gathering a lot of information. And another thing that happened during that time, I was surfing the channels, and I came across God's Learning Channel. And this was the first time I've heard about this thing called Messianic Judaism. And it's the first time that I heard them use the word Torah, instead of Old Testament. So I was very drawn to that. I started learning about the Jewish holidays and versus like the Christian holidays. And I was shocked at that point to learn that, that our Christian holidays were filled with a lot of pagan rituals. And that was kind of another one of those things, like it didn't really seem to bother a lot of people. And it was just like, why do I read these things and I just feel so shocked and so upset? And it's just like, it doesn't seem to affect other people that way. It affects some people. But I started kind of transitioning out of Christmas and Easter. But the kids were getting older, and also during this time in 2010, I separated from my husband. I got an apartment. I moved out with my youngest two. My two youngest were 17 and 20, my two youngest daughters. So the three of us got an apartment together in 2010. And so I was trying to do things like I had a job, and I quit working on Saturdays. I was trying to keep the Sabbath, even though really I had no idea what that really meant. But I would take stabs at trying to like eat kosher. The kids were with me through all this, like, Mom's not eating bacon anymore, and we can't get pepperoni on our pizza. But I really was just, just initiating into all of that kind of thinking. So this was kind of like the next phase of my journey. And it was in this phase, whenever like those teachers that I saw on God's Learning Channel would come to Abilene and have a meeting, I would try to go to the meetings. And it was at one of those meetings that someone told me about this guy from Israel that I ended up marrying. But at the time, she said, there's this Jewish guy, and he talks about the Torah on the internet radio. And so I checked out his website, and the day that I went there, he had a picture up of his wife. She had just passed away. He had been married 44 years to a Jewish woman, and he was in mourning. But I started listening to all of his teachings, his archives, and I was very, drawn to his teachings. And he got asked to come to speak on that God's Learning Channel. And so I met him in person in 2012. And I just want to tell you two things that he said that, I just remember like being like, the first one, it was kind of like the aha light bulb. And then the second one was like, I was just shocked. Okay, so the first thing that I remember him saying that was such a aha moment, because I had been praying, by this time I had been Catholic, Church of Christ, non-denominational. I had gone to a Pentecostal church. I'd gone to Baptist, Methodist, checked out the Mormons. I remember reading, like, who are these Jehovah's Witnesses? I was just asking God things like, so now I was checking out the Messianics. I was doing like part of like the home church movement for a while. And so I was always asking God, how are we supposed to know what to believe? Like, there's so many choices. There's, and so he said, Jews don't have to believe. We know. Jews don't have to believe in God. We know. He said 3 million of my family members were there at Mount Sinai. So it just was like, well, yeah, like they were told to teach their children, when you lay down and when you get up and when you go out and when you get in, speak it to your children and pass it on to the next generation and the next generation. And it wasn't, when I had been reading church history, much of Christianity had been like enforced, by Emperor Constantine and things like that. And this was a different thing. This was just a family talking to their kids and passing things down to the next generation. But the thing was, there was 3 million people at Mount Sinai receiving instructions from God, and they were still here. And that was just miraculous to me, that the Jews, the relatives of those people, were still here and living, all over the world. And the state of Israel was like being revived. And so I thought, of course, like, how did I miss this for so long? Like, the whole Bible is about the Jews and Israel. And so I made a decision at that point that I was going to start learning about God from a Jewish perspective. And, it says the Jews were told by God to be a light to the nations. And, what if nobody replaced them? What if it really was true that we're supposed to be learning from the Jews about God? So that was a big thing that he said that just hit me. And the other thing that was shocking was he said, Jesus is not God. He said, why would anybody think Jesus is God? God's not a man. Only God is God. Jesus is not God. Only God is God. And I was just like, wait, what? And it was just so shocking. And it was like one more thing in a line of so many things that had been happening since I was 12 years old. Like, you need to pray to Mary, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. I learned the prayers. Then it was like, no, you don't pray to Mary. You need to go and confess your sins to the priest. No, you don't have to confess your sins to the priest. And the Sabbath was changed to Sunday. No, the Sabbath was never changed. Christmas was Jesus' birthday. No, Christmas is pagan. Jesus is God. He's part of the Trinity. No, Jesus is not God. And so it was just like one more thing that I had to unlearn. And so, and I just saw like everything, the whole foundation of everything that I had been taught just kind of crumble. So he came. He was going by the name Paul, his Paul Sherbow. He came to Abilene, and I met him in person. Today, he's Pesach Sherbow. That's the name on his birth certificate. Is Pesach, his Hebrew name. But he came to Abilene, and I met him in person in 2012. And then he came back in the spring of 2013. And I said to him before he was leaving to go back to Israel, I said, boy, I wish you could just move here and live here in Abilene. And he said, oh, no, my home is Israel. But we felt at that point, he was 68 and I was 54. And we both felt something, but we didn't know what it was. It wasn't really romantic things that we felt. I felt very drawn to him. And he can tell his story sometime about what he was feeling. But he basically had walls up. I mean, I felt the walls. Like I said, he was married to a Jewish woman for 44 years. I wasn't Jewish. So he didn't understand what he was feeling towards me. But we started talking long distance. He got back to Israel, and we started talking. And in the fall of 2013, we got married at the Justice of the Peace. We couldn't get married in Israel because I'm not Jewish. I wasn't Jewish. And so he came there and we got married, and I came back with him to Israel, and that was 7 years ago, in October of 2013. And so much has happened in the last 7 years. We look at pictures of ourselves 7 years ago and what we were wearing, and me in my jeans and cowboy boots, and we look like two different people. We are two totally different people. Thank goodness we both changed together. and kind of transformed really into different people. But we did it together, and it's not like we grew apart. We grew closer, and it's like, I feel like everything in my life was leading me to him and to being here and to doing what we're doing now, and he feels the same way. And one of the things that I found out, like when I got here, it never even crossed my mind to convert to Judaism. My whole life I didn't ever think about that. But I got here, and after I was here about a year and a half, I had a lot of time during that time to just study. I was learning about the Hebrew language and how the Hebrew language is different, and how the Torah, like, it's a big mathematical formula, because every letter is also a number, and that's why they say, you can't change one dot, one comma, one space, or it doesn't work. Just like when you send your email, you have to get it perfect. It's like the Torah, you can't change anything. And the Torah has been preserved since Mount Sinai, which is miraculous, and that things get lost in translation. And this is all the things that I was learning. And so I just kind of knew that I needed to be Jewish. But that is not our message. I hope people know that is not our message. That, like when my mother got saved, she wanted to go and bring everybody to her church. But that's not what we're doing. It's like everybody is not supposed to be Jewish, But if you feel like I did, then there's that option. But I told my husband after I was here about a year and a half that I wanted to convert to Judaism. And I realized something about him that I didn't know, because I just wasn't aware of there are secular Jews and Orthodox Jews. Maybe people know this, but it was kind of just an eye-opener to me, that to me it reminds you of like when you go to the gym and there's really serious people, they would be the Orthodox, and then there's the not so serious, that would be the secular. So he was a Jew, but I was kind of calling him out a little bit about his level of Judaism, because we weren't separating milk and meat, and I started to realize this stuff, and I said, I want to become Jewish, and I hope I don't leave you behind. And he, when he tells his story, he says he'll never forget that moment. So we both helped each other. He is now an Orthodox Jew, and he brought me to Spot so that I could be around an English-speaking women, Jewish community. I converted to Judaism in 2018, in March of 2018, and he is now an Orthodox Jew, and both of us feel like, we're doing now what we were always made to do. We just kind of naturally fell into teaching the 7 universal laws, because I'm still so connected to my children, and my questions were, what about my kids? They're not Jewish, they don't have to become Jewish, but what do they need to do? And so I researched that a lot, and so that's what we do here. We teach Torah to the nations. So I think that is, so you will never see me, and maybe you'll understand why, because I got this question, like, why don't you ever quote from the New Testament? And you won't see me quoting from the New Testament or from the Book of Mormon or from the Catholic Catechism or any other book, just the Jewish Bible, because that's, it's not like I am making an uninformed, uneducated, emotional decision. What I wanted to tell you was that this has been a lifelong journey, lots of study, and this is what I've arrived at, And so I just wanted you to know that, and to just have a better understanding of who I am, and what you can expect here at Torah for the Nations. On the website it says, continuing the conversation started at Mount Sinai. And that's what I feel like happened. I feel like there was a break in the chain. Like, we got this beautiful inheritance from God at Mount Sinai. The Jews got it. 3 million people got it. And they were supposed to be a light to the nations. And because of all the pogroms and crusades and Inquisition, they weren't able to be a light to the nations. But now we have the safe state of Israel. We have the internet. So it's time to be a light to the nations. It's time to link people back to Mount Sinai. and continue that conversation, because there's the 7 universal laws of Noah to teach, and it's our best hope for world peace. And so that's what we teach here. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you next week.